Missing someone. Love with all your heart. Missing someone. Love with heart.
What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you guys who are new, I go by Locks by Lauryn on Instagram, and today I'm going to show you a creative color transformation, and I'm going to do a slightly different balayage technique on my client. She has more of a finer texture and she lifts very well, so I'm going to be mixing up some Pulp Riot Blondey F to lighten up these roots, and then we're going to be refreshing her creative color tone with something like a purple at the root and then like a pink on the ends. She has been refreshing her color with the color balm that I made her, which is basically some Pulp Riot color into the Pulp Riot Santa Barbara hair mask, and that's how she's been keeping her color fresh in between appointments. So when I first started mixing up the Blondey F, I first mixed up 6 and 20 equal parts. So I do about like 50 grams of 20 volume, and then I do 50 grams of the 6 volume, and then I mix the powder and developer. So since there's 100 grams of developer, I will go ahead and do 50 grams of the Blondey F powder, making that a 1:2 ratio, because this gives it a nice thick consistency, and I do measure on a scale because I like consistency throughout the whole application. So for my client's application process, since she has more of a finer texture and she does have a lot of baby hairs, I opted to do more of a teasing technique for her balayage, and this just makes it easy because with the texture of her hair, I'm able to just backcomb like 1 or 2 times, and it gives enough blend and still keeping her ends solid. So again, teasing the hair up like this and then clipping those hairs that I've teased up creates that blend, as opposed to like if I were to weave the hair. So basically the hair that's being teased up is the dimension that is left at the root. So I'm taking about a little less than like 1/2 inch sections, making sure that my sections are relatively see-through, and then I'm doing about 2 teases back and then fully saturating whatever the root is. And as I'm applying her lightener to her, I definitely make sure that I'm saturating all the way, and then as I get towards the top of the root, I like to feather up just to soften the line a little bit. And if you were to take thicker sections, sometimes you'll get some warmth, so it's really important to make sure that your section is pretty see-through just to get a really even lift throughout her foils. And the reason why I chose to do this balayage technique over what I normally do on a lot of my clients is because of the texture of her hair. It just is really easy for me to do this on her hair. Like if I can do a teasing technique and keeping the ends solid like this, it is a little bit of a quicker application than weaving for me. So I opted to do this, and it keeps her ends very solid and she'll feel like she has a lot of color. So as I get a little bit further up the head, from starting at the nape, I will start to angle my sections into a slight V. And so I'm basically taking slight diagonal backs here as I get closer towards the top, because once I reach the very top, I am going to marry these 2 sections together, so I just have one triangle section at the very top of the head. And so again, as I'm teasing too, I start to over direct that section towards her face. So I kind of pull the hair with tension towards the face, and then that's when I tease. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna leave kind of like a halo effect with where the lightness is. So if I over direct the hair towards the face and then tease, essentially the back part section that is closer towards the back of the head will get more hair in the tease because it's being over directed towards the front. So essentially they'll have the back part of my sections will get a little bit more rooty, and the front will be a little bit closer towards the root. And again, I only love doing this balayage technique on my clients who have like fine to medium hair and a lot of baby hairs, because if they don't, then it kind of makes it hard. Like let's say you have a client who has really thick coarse hair with not a lot of baby hair, it's going to be hard to do this technique and fully saturate. So in that option, I would probably do what I normally do with the foliage, but since she has more of the finer texture and she has a good amount of baby hair without teasing too much, I do love doing this for clients with this type of hair texture. And it also makes it really easy for me to like touch up her hair in the future too. As you can see, as I'm applying her lightener to the root, it's kind of right there all I don't have to like repaint or worry about overlapping. I can really see where I last painted her roots. So it just makes it easier for touch-ups too, because you can literally visually see what you need to re-highlight going through this whole balayage. So as I get towards the sides of her head, I am still taking like a slight diagonal back here, and it's really important when you're doing the front part of this balayage technique to part your client's hair wherever they part their hair. So for her, for instance, she does a side part, so I already side parted her hair, and so I'm going in and teasing her root area, but the key at this point is to tease the back. So I don't really tease, I don't know if you guys can see the hairline too much, because I want it to be a little bit higher around her face to give her that nice money piece and face frame. So again, I'm taking a slight diagonal back, and right here her hairs are a little bit finer on the sides of her hair, so I did take a slightly bigger section, but again, just teasing once or twice is plenty, and then painting on, making it a little bit closer to the root right at the hairline, and then making it a little bit more rooty towards the back. Also, this technique is only good for clients who want more of a rooty look anyways, because since we're teasing, we're technically not painting all the way towards the root, so it does give a more like lived in, soft blended feel, and that's exactly what my client wanted. She wanted something that was just barely touching her roots, but still like pretty high up. And so because of that, I only really like to have my clients come in with this amount of regrowth, because if they came in a little bit sooner, it's kind of hard to touch up the roots, especially when you're like backcombing like this, if the root isn't super long. So she waited about, I want to say maybe like 3.5 or 4 months to retouch up her roots, and honestly that was a perfect amount of time for me to redo it, because it gives me enough space to paint on the lightener and her roots. And then there you can see where she parts her hair, I did a little detail foil for her hairline. And since we're backcombing too, this creates such a beautiful and like natural blend against the hair. Like you really don't need a shadow root at all when you do this technique, and it makes everything super easy. So again, if I can ever do this on a client, like they have the texture for it, I totally try to, because it's very simple and easy, and the blend is just really pretty compared to just doing like a traditional highlight or some other type of foliage technique. So again, here I teased the hairline just a teeny bit, and I'm just painting on. And this one, because it is her money piece, I'm trying to make it a little bit closer to the root, just again so we have that halo gradient effect, to where as the color gets closer to her face, it is closer to the root, and as you get towards the back of the head, it gets a little bit more rooty. So since I'm doing her money piece area too, you can also notice that these sections are just as thin as I would be doing like a normal money piece. Like I know the rest of the sections of the entire head I did about like a 1/2 inch, but since this is like right at the hairline, I wanted it to be super detailed and closer to the root than the rest, so my sectioning is a little bit thinner like I would doing like a normal traditional highlight money piece. And then once I'm done doing the money piece, I just continue doing the diagonal back teasing across the rest of the head, and that where you see the rest of whatever I have left is kind of where she parts her hair. And it's really important, again, to part your client's hair in the direction that they do so that you can tease accordingly, so that your halo and where you want more depth is there. And since I'm also getting more closer towards the top of the head, I do try to tease in a little bit more hair. So by doing that, like let's say you want something a little bit more rooty and dark at the top, what you do with your back comb is you take the section of the hair and you back comb towards the bottom of the section if you want more hair in your tease essentially. But if you want a little bit less hair in your tease and something closer to the root, then you back comb a little bit closer to the root, if that makes sense. So I lifted my client to a beautiful level 9 and 10. She lifts really well because of her hair texture. So that is another reason why I like to use Blondey F on her, because it's very gentle on the hair, and it does give you that nice beautiful lift, as you can see. And so once this is all done, I do rinse out all of the lightener, but before I shampoo, it's good to towel dry the hair once you rinse out the lightener, and then brush out the teases before you shampoo, because that will make it a lot easier to brush out all of the back combing. And then for my client's creative color, I'm going to be using the Pulp Bright Semis, of course. So for her purple root, I'm going to mix up some velvet and jam. And we're going for more of like a deep pinkish purple root color. So I'm mixing these basically 1-to-1 equal parts. And then for her pink formula, I'm going to be using just straight Cupid. So I took my client back to my chair and fully dried her, and so now she's ready to have the color applied, and I began starting in the front. I always like to start in the front when I do a semi-color, unless I'm doing like a rainbow pattern or something like that. So for her, I started in the front, and I like to do the root first, and I like to work in quadrants because I feel like working in quadrants, you're able to get a softer blend. So I went ahead and just rooted her, taking very thin sections, brushing side to side to make sure that everything is fully saturated. And then you see how I went down the hair vertically. So now I'm going down the hair horizontally with my end color, which is Cupid, and I feel like this just makes it easier for me to cross check, make sure that I fully saturated, and get everything nice and even and well blended. So again, just working in quadrants. After I finished this side, I moved on to the other side and then finished off the back itself. And I feel like this just makes the blend a lot nicer, softer, because I feel like if I were to just root the whole thing and then put the pink on after, which you totally could, it just makes it a little bit harder to like blend the colors together really seamlessly, because the Pulp Bright Semis are formulated with a little bit of conditioner, so once they dry they kind of set, and once they're dried it's kind of hard to blend them in. So once I was done applying, I let this sit for about 25 minutes at room temperature, and then of course we rinsed her with some ice cold water at the bowl. Alrighty guys, so here is my finished look with my client. You can see how seamlessly blended her roots look. Like, we didn't even do a shadow root or anything. Obviously we did like slightly darker purple root, but it just creates like such a soft blend with her natural, and then the pink on the ends, it just looked really pretty, and she was super happy with it. I just love how this balayage technique, you're able to get such a soft blend. Like, it looks like it grew out of their head that way and just looks very natural and seamless. And it also is super easy to retouch up when you need to, because you just tease those little baby hairs again, and you're able to kind of recreate what you did each time with this balayage technique. Alrighty guys, so thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you guys learned something new, and as always, I will talk to you guys next week.